Looking around, we have many people here from many diverse backgrounds, doing many different things, all in your own way to try to think about our future and to try to think about energy and to try to think about community and whatnot. We are all here together. What we share is the need for us to figure out a future that nobody else is figuring out for us. As you know, we're under assault on many sides and on many fronts, and it's exactly a diverse gathering like this that's necessary for us to chart our future. And we all have a very important part to play in this, and the fact that you're here is a great testament to your thinking out beyond yourself, thinking about broad things and about the world that we live in and what we need to do. So I want to thank you all for coming and being part of this collective effort to try to figure out how we're going to move forward. Just to start out, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the main themes that everybody is going to be talking about today. And what I'm going to do is mention them, and then I want you to repeat them loudly so that we all have in our minds the things that we're thinking about today. So one of them is local clean energy.
Local clean energy.
That doesn't sound like much energy. We cannot start this conference, with a local clean energy. All right, local clean energy.
Local clean energy.
That's right. Sustainable economy.
Sustainable economy.
Equitable development.
Equitable development.
Resilient communities.
Resilient communities.
Energy democracy.
Energy democracy.
And community power.
Community power.
All right, what? Power.
Power.
That's it. Okay, so those are a lot of the underlying themes that we're talking about today. If it doesn't sound strictly like energy, it isn't strictly about energy. It's about all our lives in every respect, with energy being a crucial aspect of everything we do.
So I'm Kirsten Schwind. I'm the director of Bay Localize, and we are very honored to be the host organization of the Local Clean Energy Alliance. Actually helped co-found the Local Clean Energy Alliance 5 years ago. And when we founded it, there were just 3 organizations. Now there are 90 member organizations, maybe more, maybe it's up to 100, I haven't counted recently. But there's a lot. And when we founded the Local Clean Energy Alliance, everyone in this room is what we had in mind. So I'm really so glad that you're here today sharing this day with us. So I'm here to introduce our morning plenary of what's at stake and what's possible for our communities. And I want to say it is a very exciting time to be a clean energy organizer in California for 3 reasons. One of which is not for necessarily a good reason, but for a very important reason, is that California is the new Saudi Arabia of the United States. It's a scary thought. We have, with the innovations in fracking technology and all the oil that is now available that wasn't available before, there are 13 billion, is it 13? Yeah, 13 billion barrels of oil now available under California through fracking in the Monterey Shale. That goes between Monterey and Los Angeles, basically. That's half of the oil in the United States. So that's actually more than Texas or Alaska. So we are the new Saudi Arabia, and we cannot afford to burn that oil if we want to protect our planet and our climate. So it is up to us, good people, to keep that oil in the ground. So yeah, because we cannot afford to burn it. And also when you think about it, fracking uses so much water. This is an arid part of the state, and this is a part of the state where we need that water to grow food, and we need to keep that water clean. The first reason it's exciting to be an organizer now in California is we have a huge task to keep that oil in the ground, because we cannot afford to burn it. The second reason is that we are absolutely at the forefront of the clean energy solutions in California, and especially here in the Bay Area. And this conference is at the forefront of the forefront. We are absolutely the cutting edge right here. And we're going to learn so much today about all the great solutions and ways that you can plug in and make them happen. And I'm also so what's the word? I'm really so incredibly amazed and inspired by the leadership in the clean energy movement that is coming from environmental justice communities and working class communities. And that's really what this panel is about this morning. Absolutely visionary leadership coming from the laborers union. David de la Torre is here with them, really bringing working class folks to the table to say, we unions want to support clean energy policy, and we are going to be out there at the forefront doing that. From leadership coming from immigrant communities, and we have Mia Yoshitani here from Asian Pacific Environmental Network, which has been doing absolutely fabulous local advocacy and statewide advocacy on clean energy. And I'll do longer introductions to all these folks. We have Gopal here from Movement Generation, which has been doing wonderful work on framing the climate crisis and making sure that people really know what this is about. And we have Annie Loya here from Youth United for Community Action at East Palo Alto, which is training youth to be deeply involved in land use policy and planning to make sure that communities that are most vulnerable to climate change are prepared and ready and ready to go and to meet that threat. Because what's really at stake is that climate change is the world's biggest human rights violation ever, because it was perpetrated by people with wealth and power, but the people who are going to be feeling the most impacts are not those people. And so what's at stake here in the Bay Area is people with asthma will have more asthma attacks. What's at stake here in the Bay Area is that people may be losing their homes, that people may not be able to afford basics such as food, water, or housing. There's so many more local impacts of climate change that elderly people, young people may lose their lives during heat waves, or workers who have to work outside. Actually, every year California loses some farm workers due to deaths during high heat waves. And so the impacts here are real, and they impact people who have less wealth and less social privilege more. And so it's really no accident that these communities are at the forefront of visionary leadership in the climate movement as well. So that's why it gives me such great pleasure to introduce this panel. First, I'm going to introduce Gopal. Gopal, I've known you for years, and I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Any other Gopals in the room? Okay.
I should have asked you. No. Gopal and I actually went to the same high school together. But I'm going to say a little bit about Gopal before I bring him up. He is a collective member of the Movement Generation Justice and Ecology Project, which brings a strategic understanding of the ecological crisis and the transition to racial, economic, and environmental justice organizers. Gopal has also been on the board or worked with a number of other organizations, including the Center for Story-Based Strategy, the Rucka Society, International Accountability Project, the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition, and Project Underground, and is absolutely one of the smartest people I know. Please welcome Gopal.
Thank you. I'm so excited there's another Gopal here today. People are like, wow, that's such an unusual name. That's like, no, it's actually not. There's a whole lot of us on this planet. And many of us are named Gopal. So I was asked to open up the panel today with a little bit of framing of kind of the moment we're in and the crisis and in some ways what we see as kind of the central responsibility or action before us. We all are engaged right now in a great transition. We don't know exactly where it's going to go. We all have an idea where we want it to go. And for us, a just transition, this idea that we can go from where we are to a better way forward, is the political project of our time, to remake our relationships to place and to each other. And so I want to start by making an observation, which is that from our perspective at Movement Generation, part of transition, a key piece of transition, is navigating the contradictions. So it's important for us to have a really big vision and a clear sense of where we want to go. But getting there from here will be about navigating the challenging contradictions of living in the world we live in now. And so as I sort of frame out what I consider to be some of the kind of the important principles or that we've been thinking about for what this transition should lead us to and what it should look like, I want to start by acknowledging that all of us are engaged in this work in a way that requires us to ask very hard questions about what do I do now, given the resources at my disposal, given the community I live in, given the conditions of the folks that I care about, given my own conditions. These are the contradictions we navigate, right? What I fear most is that we end up obsessing about the irrelevant contradictions like paper or plastic. And instead of engaging in the real struggle around contradictions, around race, around class, around power, around privilege, around control and ownership, those are the contradictions we should be struggling to figure out how to navigate well. And so I want to start by both recognizing that the contradictions are real and they're all around us and we're all struggling to figure out the right way forward, given where we are. And it's important to prioritize which contradictions we're going to dive into head on and work on. So first, let me just say, I think we all agree, and Al really said this right at the beginning, this, if you think this is just about where we get our energy, you are wrong. It is about completely remaking the economy. And when we say power, we recognize that food is power, that water is power, that soil is power. That, from our perspective, the most important kind of power, work, labor, human work is power, that our culture is power, right? And so when we say we need clean power, we don't just mean we need low carbon intense energy. We mean we need to get the dirty out of everything. And what's the dirty, right? The dirty is the corporate control, the lack of democracy, the legal and functional barriers to public participation in the decisions that affect people's daily lives. So for us, clean is really about getting the dirty out. And in one key piece of that, it's about getting the dirty money out. And so in some ways, I feel like we need to launder our energy system and launder power, meaning we need to decouple the money from the control, from the decisions, from the ownership, right? So if that's what the dirty is, what's clean? So, and these are things that everybody probably already knows, but I want to lay a few ideas out about what we consider to be clean. So first, it needs to be decentralized. And I want to make a clear distinction between decentralized and distributed. I believe it should be distributed as well, but decentralized and distributed are not the same thing. Distributed is about generation, and decentralized is about ownership and control. So decentralized is about democratic ownership and control, and distributed is about generation. And those two things come together, and that's the sweet spot we're looking for. But let us not think that simply because we have distributed generation that we cannot still concentrate control, which is the way distributed is going if we do not intervene with public power, community-controlled power, those kinds of questions. So that's an important struggle for us around local clean energy, right? So it's decentralized. It's democratized. So you can also decentralize and have lots of private owners, but for it to be democratized, people need to be in control of the decisions that affect their daily lives. Again, we see the energy system as a key strategic point of intervention in remaking the whole of the economy. But let's not lose sight of, let's keep our eyes on that prize, the bigger picture of the economy. So decentralized, democratized. It needs to be diversified. We are not going to solarize our way out of the climate crisis or the economic crisis or ecological erosion or social injustice. It's an absolutely essential piece of navigating the transition, but we need to look at all of the different ways that we can get healthy, clean, democratized energy, and that part of that diversity is also reducing and redistributing our consumption of resources, right? local clean energy can't just be about where it comes from. It also has to be about, obviously, who owns and controls it, but not just where we get it, but what we use it for and how much of it we use, right? So part of our local clean energy vision has to be about rethinking how we actually apply the energy at our disposal towards the transition we want. Oh, that is my timer. Wow. Okay, so I'll finish in 1 second. So decentralized, democratized, diversified, and as I mentioned, we need to reduce and redistribute how what we use and how we use it. And I will end there because I'm really excited to hear all my friends here talk about the very concrete things they're doing in their communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopal, for that great framing. Next, I'd like to welcome up Mia Yoshitani, who is the Associate Director of the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, more commonly known as APEN. And APEN is everywhere these days. I mean, fighting toxics from the Chevron refinery up in Richmond to at the state level, making sure that some of the money that's coming in from the cap and trade is actually going to the communities that most need it in California. They're fighting to make sure we can expand solar installations in California. And Mia is a complete organizing superstar. In her early 20s, she was the executive director of the largest student environmental network in the United States. She was at the original, the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit in 1991, was on the drafting committee of those wonderful principles of environmental justice. She is been serving as APEN's associate director for the past 5 years, and is absolutely a wonderful, smart person. And so, welcome, Mia.
Thank you, and thank you, Gopal, for setting me up.
Good job.
Yeah, I know. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be in a room with so many allies and friends and even family and coworkers, colleagues, and fellow community members, fellow travelers. So I always find it useful to start with my main point so that in case I run out of time, which I'm sure I'm going to, that I don't forget to say really the most important thing about what I'm trying to say. So I'll just start with that so we can get that over with. So my main point is one that was even touched on by Gopal, of course, because he always has to say the things that I'm going to say first. Low-income communities and communities of color in California have been paying this state's climate debt for decades, right? We've already been paying. By living in the neighborhoods most impacted by fossil fuel and the fossil fuel industry, with the worst and the most polluted air, the most polluted water, the most polluted soil, and paying the biggest economic price with the least economic benefit. So now we've come to collect on our climate debt, and in the form of locally controlled, distributed, decentralized, clean, renewable energy. And in the process, we're going to make the world a better place for all of you. So you're welcome. So that's it. I can sit down now. My organization, APEN, and thank you for that nice introduction, we've been winning environmental justice and building power and leadership in low-income Asian Pacific Islander immigrant communities and refugee communities in the Bay Area for 20 years, and more recently across the state. We are a powerhouse. Our first organizing project was in Richmond, California, and we still have an organizing project there in the Laotian refugee community. And when we first started that organizing project, it was because that community was being poisoned, like the rest of the Richmond residents, poisoned by industrial toxins, a toxic donut surrounding their neighborhoods. The biggest polluter by far was, and still is today, the Chevron oil refinery. Exactly. And when I first joined APEN as a youth organizer back in 1996, to me, it was a classic case of environmental racism, a combination of poverty and pollution that's still part of the daily life of most Richmond residents. And so many low-income communities of color and low-income communities across the state and country and world, for that matter. What I didn't recognize back then was that these communities are on the front line of a global climate fight, and that they have been for decades, literally facing down the fossil fuel industry in California. So we know that low-income communities and communities of color are already being hit first and being hit worse by the impacts of climate change, and will be hit even harder by the rising cost of energy, of food, of water, and by the heat waves, by the rising tides, and by increasing fires, and all the rest of the natural disasters that climate change is bringing in its wake. But frontline communities and the climate fight are also, frontline communities in the climate fight are also leading the way to reimagine the communities of the future. How we can jam our foot in the door of this economic transition that Gopal was talking about. This transition that we all need, we know is going to happen, the transition away from fossil fuels. But how can we jam our foot in that door and crack it wide open to a just transition? One that is good for workers, one that's good for low-income communities, good for communities of color, and good for everyone. So now close your eyes for just a minute and think of those communities that we want to build in the future. When I see it, I see healthy, vibrant, cooperative, democratic communities where everyone has a livelihood, not just a job. And everyone has access to housing, to an education, to healthcare, to healthy food, clean, renewable energy. I see communities where you don't have to poison yourself or your family to work, where you don't have to sacrifice health for housing, and we don't have to destroy the planet to meet our needs. This vision is at the core of why good energy policy that benefits low-income communities of color is so critical for a just transition. And right now, we have an opportunity in our lifetime to disrupt this pattern that Gopal was talking about, to make the fundamental changes to our economy, and it starts by engaging local communities in fights that build new models for energy production and ownership. So like Gopal was saying, it's a starting point, and it's an essential, central starting point that brings us a new imagined community and allows us to envision a new way of being. So we can produce all the clean, renewable energy that we need to live, work, and play right in our own neighborhoods. And that's what the Local Clean Energy Alliance is about. That's at the core of what APEN's policy work is about. It's fundamental to transitioning our community and to addressing the roots of environmental justice that we've been fighting for the last 20 years. So we can create these local jobs. We can spend our money in the local economy for the things that we need and the things that we love. We can make our decisions about energy in our local communities. Energy policy is not just about pollution, or even just about solving climate change, as Gopal was saying. It's about self-determination and power. The new power economy is about power for people, power for the most impacted people, people who have been dragged along by the previous fossil fuel economy. So what we want to see is fully divesting our economy from fossil fuels, a just transition for workers that provides equal or better jobs. How about that? Better jobs than we have. That is part of the vision. Guaranteed full employment. An economy that works for all of us. Massive investment in local solutions, like the small-scale, local renewable energy for everyone. We need public transportation, affordable housing, near jobs and transit, and I will stop. We need the livable, walkable cities that we can really see in our dreams, in this vision for our communities. We need healthcare and education. We need healthy kids and healthy families. We want to build a winning climate movement with the right energy solutions. We have to fight for what we really want, for the thriving, healthy, just communities that we can all picture in our hearts. We have to fight for real solutions that will bring dignity to working families, that will keep our kids healthy and safe, that will honor our cultures and our history, and that will put humanity and our ecology back into balance. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Mia. And speaking of better jobs, it's my pleasure to introduce next David de la Torre, who is the Secretary-Treasurer of the Laborers International Union of North America, Local 261, which is local in San Francisco, I believe. He joined the Laborers in 1991 and spent 12 years organizing in the field. Being a labor organizer is such a hugely important and difficult job, so thank you for all that. And I have to say that the laborers have really stepped up to support clean solar policy in San Francisco, and especially to support Clean Energy SF. So we really are thankful for your leadership in bringing labor along to support that work. David is also an alternative representative on the San Francisco Workforce Investment Board, and he has served as a member of Mayor Ed Lee's 100% Renewable Energy Task Force. And he's been engaged in policy discussions designed to promote good-paying jobs with benefits and career opportunities for economically disadvantaged communities, and to build new partnerships between community groups, environmentalists, and organized labor, which are sorely needed. So thank you so much for that leadership. Welcome, David.
My name is David de la Torre. I'm with the Laborers, Local 261. LIUNA is the acronym for Laborers International Union of North America. We're international because we have members in both Canada and United States. Locally, 261 represents San Mateo, San Francisco, and Marin counties. We are one of 11 locals affiliated with the District Council, which represents Northern California. We also have a regional office, and which represents several states and so forth. So we'll start off with what's at stake. There's one before that. Yeah, what's at stake and what's possible for the Bay Area communities. Okay, now we may proceed, Eddie. Okay, who are the Laborers? Founded in 1903 with over 500,000 members across North America and a history of progressive leadership. A building trade union with members in every community working in construction, on roads, buildings, utilities, schools, commercial buildings, and homes, as well as renewable energy, energy efficiency, and weatherization. LIUNA stands for fairness, for working people, regardless of color, gender, race, ethnicity, no matter our country or origin. LIUNA, Local 261, also supports opportunities for communities, and we were a big supporter of local, the local hire ordinance in San Francisco. So, next slide. We believe in reshaping America's energy future. We believe in a green economy that promotes not only jobs, but good-paying jobs with benefits such as healthcare, retirement, training, and career development, particularly for economically disadvantaged communities and environmental justice neighborhoods. LIUNA supports comprehensive climate change legislation. Layers have helped build landmark renewable energy and energy efficiency projects, such as the Ivanpah, I hope I pronounced that right, Sunset Reservoir, and the SFPUC building, and we strongly supported Prop 39. And if you look, there's a couple examples of some of the projects that our members worked on and helped build. On the top, your left, I guess, is the Sunset Reservoir solar panel installment. At that time, it was the largest municipal solar panel installation in the state, and our members installed hundreds of those panels. Going clockwise, we have the SFPUC building, which is a platinum LEED building. Our members performed over 1/3 of the man hours on that project. And to the left of that is the Ivanpah solar thermal farm in Southern Cal, which our sister local 783, our members also participated on. We had over 300 members on that particular project with over 95% community participation, so we were very proud of that. And then on the bottom, you'll see it was a rally in our sister local 304, which represents Alameda County, and I know some of my brothers are back there So thank you for coming. We supported, we had a big old rally. On the first slide, you'll actually see a bigger picture of how many people actually, we had a great turnout. We had over 400 members. We did a lit bomb in Berkeley. And again, Prop 39, as you well know, is the bond for energy efficiency funding throughout the state. And if there'll be extra credit later on, if those of you can point out this afternoon's keynote speaker. So next slide, please. There's much at stake for Bay Area working families. Building trade unions have tens of thousands of members in the Bay Area. Labor's Local 261 has 5,000 members in San Francisco, San Mateo, and Marin counties. And there will be more than 15,000 members Bay Area-wide. Many members live in communities that will be most negatively impacted by climate change. At the same time, many working families are still recovering from the recession, and to quote President Obama, may be concerned about the temperature of the planet, but it's probably not their number one concern. And if you look at the photo, you'll see everything highlighted in blue is what's anticipated that will be affected due to climate change. And it's important to note that a lot of our members live in these underserved communities. That's going to be, that shows on the map that will be affected by the climate change. Next slide. What's possible for Bay Area working families? It is critical to connect clean energy and greenhouse gas reduction initiatives with economic opportunity in order to build partnerships between environmentalists and building trade unions. It's about advocating not just for clean energy jobs, but advocating for good paying clean energy jobs with benefits and access to apprenticeship. At the same time, building trade leaders must engage environmentalists to become fully conversant about the realities of climate change in order to educate our membership. Both sets of stakeholders can do better to collaborate. Again, the illustration there, that's the Potrero Power Plant. In this slide, you see what I think is an important example of who environmentalists, community, and organized labor can work together. At the top of the right slide, you can see a picture of San Francisco's dirty power plant, Potrero Power Plant. This is a polluting power plant in San Francisco southeast neighborhoods where the city has historically put its dirty power plants. It's closed now, but several years ago, there was an effort by some officials to shut down the Potrero plant by building a new dirty power plant to replace it. The laborers were approached with a request to support the construction of a new power plant with an offer that it would be built by our members, all union. We brought this back to the membership, and what made it easy to say no was our ability to point to other clean energy projects that were willing to make the same type of commitments, or at least to entertain the idea of working with local unions to develop these projects. You see, that's it, give it up. You see, Save Go Solar. It's on there. That's the Sunset Reservoir project next to it. And then you see Clean Power SF, which is a program that we have supported for the past several years. Our members and our leadership rejected the offer to build the new power plant, and that's something that we are very proud of. And next slide. Oh, and in closing, I'll stop. This is important, because this one here, it's a rally in front of City Hall, San Francisco City Hall, on the steps of it. And it was on May Day, International Workers' Day, and we were proud and glad to have Sierra Club's support in it. So with that, I will close. Thank you.
Annie started volunteering and organizing at the tender age of 13. When she joined the Higher Learning Corps, well, actually, that was 14. And then as a young organizer, led the campaign to shut down a negligent toxic waste facility in East Palo Alto. And so she also sat on the ad hoc committee, led to the structure of the Funders Collaborative on Youth Organizing. and a number of other things. And she's also the chair of the Public Works and Transportation Commission in East Palo Alto. But really, I'm most impressed with the work of the organization she leads up, Youth United for Community Action. This is an organization that trains young people in East Palo Alto in how to get involved in planning processes and be leaders in their communities. And they're really taking a close look at how East Palo Alto will be impacted by climate change, especially with flooding in that area, and making sure that youth who are going to be most impacted through their lifetimes are at the forefront of finding those solutions for their communities. So please welcome Annie.
Good morning, thank you. My nerves hit me just now, so bear with me. As Kirsten said, I'm from East Palo Alto, and most notably that our organization has been able to accomplish is shut down a negligent toxic waste facility by the name of Romic in 2007. And so it's important for us to note, thank you, it was a community-wide 20-year-long campaign. And so when we think about change in our community, it does take time, and we have to be able to weather the storm. And it's important for me to note that for us to explore climate adaptation and clean energy, we were born out of the environmental justice movement. And I have to pay homage to our history and our beginning and our epicenter, and note that there are still communities that are dealing with polluting stationary sources, and that it's important for us to be inclusive of our communities and our struggles and our fight, that we're not just talking about fracking, but we're still talking about agencies as well being accountable and to our community, and stationary sources as well being accountable to our communities. And so what I wanted to talk a little bit about as we discuss solutions is local community versus government agency, and the necessity in finding the happy medium. Is it possible? So our journey for climate adaptation began February 2nd, 1998, 15 years ago with El Nino. In 1998, I was in 8th grade. And the cities of the peninsula reached a 45-year floodplain. We were impacted East Palo Alto, and Menlo Park. And this here is an image. There's very dense housing in East Palo Alto. And this is the image of the soft stories units being completely flooded. So those are garages underneath the first story housing. I can use my handy dandy laser pointer. And people are actually, those are people, those are heads that's in this water trying to pull out a car. There's a video on YouTube that you can actually look at. What's interesting for us in the peninsula, as we discuss what's the happy medium, is that East Palo Alto is a city that's completely different than Menlo Park and Palo Alto. And I have to clarify the myth that East Palo Alto is east of Palo Alto. East Palo Alto and Palo Alto are completely different cities and in different counties. And the demographics are completely different as well. In 2009, East Palo Alto median household income was about $40,000, population 30,000. In Palo Alto, the median household income is about $118,000, population 60,000. So when we're talking about resources and access to resources and race and class, we're talking about two very distinct communities. But flooding, however, water has no boundaries. And so both Palo Alto and East Palo Alto were severely impacted by the storm of El Nino. And because of that, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and Palo Alto formed the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority to address flooding in our cities. So, which brings us to the Newell Road Bridge. And, you know, even symbolically, bridges are supposed to unite us. This bridge crosses the San Francisco Creek. So you can see the bridge here. This bridge is 112 years old. When it was built, the primary mode of transportation was horse and buggy. So it's completely inadequate for current modes of transportation, sometimes SUVs, right? We've completely changed. And so you can see here the structure of the bridge is sort of this square shaped. And the issue with this bridge is not only is it narrow, so only one car can pass at a time, and that gets us into transportation. That's a whole nother energy or climate issue we have to consider. But it also prevents water from flowing into under this bridge in the San Francisco Creek, which causes flooding. And this was actually one of the areas that were severely flooded in 1998 and even just last winter. So, as any public process, there were public hearings held in both East Palo Alto and Palo Alto about the correction of this bridge, to raise it, to bring it up to ADA standards so that 2 cars can pass, there's bike lanes, there's sidewalks. Oh my gosh, that was fast. And what was interesting that came out these public hearings was the undertone of race and class. The Palo Alto, and this is my point with these slides, is that, let me see. If the locals had their way, Palo Alto community residents, they would tear the bridge down completely, continuing to separate the communities. And they have the resources. They quickly named it the Super Bridge. A lot of this community members fund their local newspapers that reaches the peninsula. And there was an outpour of like, no, if we improve this bridge, there's going to be an increase in crime. People are going to hit our children. And if you want to address flooding, just tear down the bridge. So when we talk about flood prevention, we also have to now consider race and class. And when there's too much government, my next point, little can get done. So when we talk about flooding in East Palo Alto, there's a pump station. We're completely surrounded. This is a pond. This area is the gardens of East Palo Alto. This is homes, residential homes. On this end over here is the sea level rise for the Bay Area up here. My left would be the sea level rise. To my right would be the San Francisco Creek. So we're completely surrounded by water. And this pond that has no access to the sea has now been labeled the wetlands and waters of the US under the Army Corps. So when we think, and it's a habitat. So when we need to do maintenance that then stabilizes our pumps, to address flooding, we have to go to the federal and state government to get permits, and which can take a very long time, if any of us know how long that takes, and thousands of dollars. So it now prohibits the city from being able to do active maintenance that will then prevent flooding or address the flooding issue in East Palo Alto. So when there's too much government, that can also be a deterrent to addressing these issues in our communities. I'm trying to move here. So what's the happy medium? Now this is a very local example in respect to even climate, is we're now working with the Red Cross, the East Palo Alto Police Department, the Menlo Park Fire District, and local faith-based and CBOs to develop a communication plan for the city in the event of an emergency. What's unique about this is that we have all these experts. We have the intermediaries, we have the local government agencies, and we have communities bringing their own expertise to the table to then be able to address and develop a plan, devise a plan that will meet the needs of the community. This communication plan will then be tied into the larger countywide communication plan. And it's beneficial to the community because we have a place at the table. So when we think about public processes, community must be at the table. When we think, and we also understand the necessity of other experts in the room. And so as we think about moving forward and we think about inclusivity, as Gopal was mentioning, you've been referenced a lot today. That's the benefit of going first. It's not solely about fracking, clean energy, right? It's about stationary sources, which what our organization was birthed out of. It's about protecting the most impacted communities. It's about public process and partnerships. It's about developing the policies together. And even when we talk about challenging our own contradictions, our contradictions even within the room of energy and climate and environmental justice, that there's also some silos that we must break down in order to include and to be true to the values of the work that we want to be able to do, so that we're able to move forward and really be able to address comprehensively the issues that are currently affecting us. Thank you.